Hi, if you're just tuning in, this is CourageTV, a TV show that celebrates everyday people who have taken courageous steps in their lives. And I'm here with a special guest. His name is Pfeifer. He's a writer, editor, and author of Write It, Speak It, Writing a Speech They'll Applaud. So Tom, you've written this beautiful, awesome book that you just shared with us. Can you show us to the audience?
I can do that.
Now, you just finished this book several years ago, right?
I published it in 2016.
2016. So are you working on another book?
I am.
Yeah? What is the next book?
Well, the working title is The #1 Secret to Writing.
The #1 secret to writing. Okay. Do you have a little hint that you can give us?
I can tell you the whole book.
Okay.
#1 secret to writing is write.
Ah.
But
okay.
I give you 10 ways in which you can write better.
And what are some of the ways you might write better?
Well, one of the biggest problems that people, or one of the biggest mistakes that people make,
Yeah.
is that they don't realize that the English language is the most incomprehensible language on the planet Earth.
Ah.
You can write AM, PM, small AM and PM, capital PM, AM and PM,
Right.
small a period, M period, and any way that you write it is correct. But if you have a staff of 3 people and everybody is spelling it a different way, that creates an inconsistency in your messaging, and it creates an inconsistency in your communications.
Right.
You can spell advisor 2 different ways too. ADVISER or ADVISOR.
Right. That's like the British and American.
No, they're
Right?
both American.
Yeah?
They're both in the
didn't
dictionary and they're
know.
both correct.
Wow. Okay.
So you can spell it either way. In America, we spell it with the ER more often than the OR.
Right.
But you can spell it either way and be correct. But if you spell it different ways throughout your copy, people are going to say you're sloppy. So.
Yeah. So consistency is super important.
Yes, I teach clearness, conciseness, and consistency.
Okay. So what is the tricks to being super clear, especially when you're talking about something that can be complicated, like more technical things?
The magic is in the rewrite.
Okay. So how many rewrites would you want?
Until it's done.
All right.
Hemingway, in one of his novels, and I forget which one it was, said that he rewrote the ending 39 times before
Wow.
he was satisfied with it.
Wow.
There is no right or wrong. You write it until it pops. I have never written anything in my life that I haven't rewritten, at least once.
Yeah.
And the better you get at it, the more you do it, the better you get at it. But you still want to go back and rewrite it. That speech I gave earlier today has gone through probably 45 revisions.
Wow. That's impressive.
And I'm still not satisfied with it.
Yeah.
That ending still isn't quite right.
Do you ever get to a point where you are fully satisfied with any of your writing?
No.
Okay. This is kind of like an artist, you know, some artists and painters, they just keep painting and they're never satisfied until there's like a deadline. They just have to put the paintbrush down.
Exactly. Deadlines are our friend. If there weren't deadlines, we wouldn't get anything done. as
Yeah.
artists.
Sometimes you just have to deliver it, right?
Yes.
So I hear that there's a copywriter who gives an advice. Is there a minimum amount of time for you when you're writing anything, or you're just writing it until you're satisfied?
I write it until I'm up against that deadline.
Okay.
Self-imposed or imposed from the outside.
Yeah. That's great. So what are some things that you enjoy writing about?
Well, I don't know that I enjoy writing about politics these days, but I do write a lot about politics because politics interests me.
Yeah.
And particularly today with the lack of compromise on Capitol Hill and the White House, between the White House and Capitol Hill, and getting the courts in there. It's like compromise is not a 4-letter word. It's a 10-letter word.
Yeah.
Count them. COMPRO M-I-S-E.
Right, 10 letters.
And you count them on your 10 fingers, which is important.
Right.
Because you have 10 fingers, you have 10 toes, and they're better to grab each other. They're divisible by 2, not by 4. So you grasp each other with your 5 fingers, creating a 10, and that's how compromise is built.
Okay. Wow. So in your writing, are you talking about the importance of compromises in Capitol Hill, or are you more like writing journalism? This is what happened today.
No, I don't do journalism that much anymore. I was a journalist in Southern California for 15 years.
Yeah.
And then I went to work for Washington as a congressional press secretary and communications director for another 15 years.
Right.
And I now pretty much just espouse my viewpoints when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
I believe that today we are at a crisis point in politics. That if we don't learn to compromise again, we are going to be in another civil war. I firmly believe that. Our country was founded on compromise. Actually, our country was not founded on compromise. It was founded on common ground, the Articles of Confederation,
right,
in which you had all 13 states had to agree unanimously in order to get anything done. You know how often that happened? Never. That's why they went for the Constitutional Convention,
right,
and made the hard compromises on slavery, on the makeup of Congress, on the makeup of the courts, on the powers that split in the Electoral College that everybody's yelling about these days. Right. These were all hard compromises that they had to make in order to keep the Union together.
Okay. Yeah. So in today's world, how would you introduce or encourage people to compromise more? What is your strategy?
It comes down to communication. And communication comes from knowing somebody. Right now, we have Congress works 3 days a week. They come in on Tuesday, and they fly home Thursday night or Friday morning. 3-day work weeks.
Right.
I say we have 3-week work weeks, where they come in for 3 weeks. They're forced to work 7 days a week with each other, live together, eat together, get to know each other, have their families here, have their kids get to know each other's spouses. And once you get to know somebody, it's a lot harder to call them a flaming idiot on the House floor. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Ronald Reagan was a Republican president. Tip O'Neill was a very liberal Democratic Speaker of the House. They used to meet on Fridays and have over a glass of scotch. Just to talk, not politics, but in doing so, they learned how to compromise and get things done for the sake of our country.
Right. Yeah, so we had a diversity and inclusion coach last time, and she was talking about how when you interact with people and have conversations, it humanizes the whole experience.
Right.
Right? Yeah, I can totally see that. So is that something that you're pitching to Congress, or how would you share this message?
I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay.
There's a group called No Labels that is pushing similar ideas.
Right.
So I'm going to try to get in touch with them and see if I can't find a way to get that message out through them or with them or in concert with them, however.
Yeah, got it. Now, in your day job, I understand you have a company, Consistent Voice, is that right?
Consistent Voice Communications.
Consistent Voice Communication. What do you do in that company?
We help leaders and potential leaders to learn how to communicate more clearly, concisely, and consistently.
So how do you train them? Do you do corporate training? Do you do group training? How does that work?
We do group trainings. We do workshops. We do one-on-one training. I'll have an online training course starting in September.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And if we can't train them, we'll do it for them. We'll write and edit whatever they need.
And then would you train them on how to speak and deliver it in an impactful way as well?
I'd probably turn them over to you for that.
Got it. So you're the writer, the genius behind the ideas.
Right. I'll teach you how to write a speech.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll send it to you to learn how to deliver.
Yeah, got it. So talk to me more about this book. What was the inspiration for this book?
Well, this book came about because a friend of mine, Paul White, who anybody who's in Toastmasters in this area has heard of Paul White.
Okay.
He suggested that I put on a workshop on speech writing. So I said, sure, I can do that. And as I was putting together the workshop, he came up to me one day, and he said, you know what would go real good with that workshop? A book. I said, yeah, I can do that.
Well, you're a writer, so
I'm a writer.
It should be natural.
And actually, writing the book helped me focus more on the workshop.
Oh, okay.
Because the workshop falls very closely to the book now.
Oh. So is there a certain structure to your workshop then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the structure? What might someone expect to experience if they walk into a workshop with you?
I have made all the mistakes that there are to be made, and I share them with you so you don't have to make them. Right. And then we go through exercises so that you can share my mistakes in a safe atmosphere and learn that writing is not as scary as you think it is.
That sounds impactful. So Tom, you have this really interesting book in front of you. Can we have a little excerpt from your book?
Sure. Let's do The Power of Stories.
The Power of Stories.
Correct. Why stories? For two reasons. One, people relate to stories much more than they do numbers or a recitation of facts. We're humans. We've been telling stories around the fire since we could utter our first words. Think about all the family stories you've heard that have been passed down from generation to generation. We relate to stories, and the storyteller, and are much more likely to remember what he or she said as well as comprehend it. But here's the kicker for you as someone trying to eulogize your fears. Stories are easy for the speaker to remember too. When I first embarked on the road to public speaking, I tried to memorize my speeches. I failed completely. My brain would freeze on stage. I was dying up there. My friend and mentor Paul White mentioned one day that he too tried memorization and it didn't work for him either. So then he tried just telling stories and he could do that. So I tried telling stories too, and it worked. Listeners remember stories too. It's a win-win. In fact, scientists tell us stories activate the brain. Archaeologists tell us storytelling has been around at least as long as cave paintings and probably longer. Advertisers use them to sell us. Comedians use them to make us laugh. Speakers use them to make their speeches memorable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, when you're talking about stories, how do you choose which story to tell?
Well, a story you have to tell has to make a point. I have a story that I use in several speeches, and I'll tell it to you now. My mother used to say, when you ask a child at the age of 4 what that child wants to be, what that child tells you is what that child is going to be. My brother Michael, at the age of 4, told my mother he was going to be a lawyer. He is a lawyer. I told my mother at the age of 4 that I was going to be a writer. I am a writer. My brother Larry told my mother at the age of 4 that he was going to be a singer. He's a custodial engineer.
He's an engineer. What happened?
I tell that story for several different reasons. One is the power of 3. That's called the comedic 3. 2 lines to set up the joke and then the joke.
Ah, okay. 1 to set up, 3 is the punchline.
Correct.
Got it.
I also use that story when I'm talking about success.
Right.
Because Michael and I are entrepreneurs. We're going to probably be working until we can't anymore. Larry retired at the age of 58 with a good pension. He and his wife bought a condo down the Myrtle Beach area, and he sings in honky-tonks whenever he wants. Success is what you make for yourself, not what other people think.
Right. So as an entrepreneur, there's usually, many people wants to be entrepreneur, but they're scared and afraid to take that leap sometimes. So as an entrepreneur, do you feel this type of fear when you're branching out on your own sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I deal with it through stupidity. I would suggest that anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur take some business classes first. I had no business background when I jumped into the pond.
Yeah.
And it cost me. It cost me pretty much my life savings. And I had to rebuild it in order to be able to retire comfortably.
Right.
Now, I'll never retire because I don't want to. I like to work.
Yeah.
But, when you spend your nest egg unrealistically and unwarrantedly, take the business classes first.
Okay, so your advice is take the business class and then jump on this entrepreneur journey.
Yes.
Now, sometimes people, when they know too much, it might stop them. Once they learn all these business class, maybe they'll decide, oops, I'm going back to.
Well, that might have happened to me.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. So I was reading a book by Richard Branson, and all his successes, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He has tons of different companies, and it happens because he doesn't know. So he's just testing and trying things out.
Right.
Yeah.
Failure is your friend.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone, maybe it's yourself when you're younger, on how you can approach failure and, be courageous and take that steps?
Well, what did Thomas Edison say? I didn't learn 1,000 ways of not to build, not to.
I
didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000, or figured out 1,000 ways not to build a light bulb.
Right.
You're going to fail. It's inevitable. That's how you learn. But you continue to, the successes are so much more richer then.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So if someone was about to take this step at the brink and they're facing failure, what is the push? How do you get the momentum to just go for it?
Work through it.
Just work through and experience that. Get comfortable with that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Pfeifer, and he has prepared a special presentation for us today, titled, I Am Great.
I am great. I know that because I've been told that since I was this high. At least I used to know it, and I used to believe it. But it wasn't until I challenged my greatness that I began on the road toward greatness. And I found that the journey is much more satisfying and gratifying than the destination ever was. I was born to be a writer. I've been carrying a pad of paper and a writing utensil in my pocket since I was 7 years old. The English language has always intrigued me. I love the rules. I before E except after C, and the thousands of words where the E comes before the I and there is no C. Never end a sentence with a preposition. For I am the grammar snob for whom your mom warned you about. And never, never start a sentence with and. Because of that fascination, I've been a pretty good writer. Straight A's in high school, straight A's in my college creative writing classes. It wasn't unusual for my teachers to write on my papers, "That's great," and my mom to tape it to the kitchen refrigerator. After high school, I moved to New Hampshire, and I lived in a renovated caboose with my cat, Little Critter. There, I pounded out short stories and sent them off to publishers. I left New Hampshire with a shoebox full of rejection slips. But I wasn't dejected. Many great writers have been rejected hundreds of times before their greatness was realized. Then I moved to California, where I studied journalism in college. It was the only writing curriculum they had at that college. I figured, hey, Mark Twain was a journalist. Ernest Hemingway was a journalist. Must be pretty good training. At the end of my freshman year, my journalism instructor, Marge Inbach, came up to me and said, "You know what, Tom? As far as I'm concerned, you're already a professional writer. I don't think there's anything else I can teach you." I know, right? Because I'm great. But this time I decided to challenge that greatness. So I drove down to the local newspaper office, sat down with the managing editor, John Rogers. John and I knew each other. We were drinking buddies. I said, "John, Marge tells me I'm already a great writer and there's nothing else she can teach me. She's right, of course, but I want to test it anyway. Do you have any summer internships open?" As a matter of fact, he did. "Report on Monday," he said. There were no computers in those days. We typed on paper. The paper was edited with lead pencils. To move the paragraphs, they actually ripped the paper and then scotch taped the paragraphs in their new positions. I don't remember what I was assigned that day, but I do remember the aftermath. The copy editor was a cantankerous old coot by the name of Bob Satterthwaite. I saw him walking over to my desk with my copy full of lead and full of scotch tape. He crumpled it up, he threw it at my forehead and said, "Rewrite that, I can't turn that into the proofreader." What? I'm not great? No, I wasn't. But on that day, I started on the road to greatness. It was a satisfying and gratifying journey towards greatness, and Bob became a mentor. And what is a mentor anyway but a supportive critic? Bob was gruff. Tact was not his style. But if you were willing to learn, he was willing to teach. For 15 years, I toiled as a journalist. Had many Bob Satterthwaites along the way, editors and fellow writers who would point out an error or suggest a better way to tell a story. Then I came to Washington to work in the congressional office. I no longer had that community of supportive critics. All of a sudden, I was told once again, "You are great!" And I could have fallen very easily into that rabbit hole. To avoid it, I had to find other supportive critics. And I started with my daughters, who were about 11 at the time. Do you have kids? Do you want harsh critics? My wife could never find an error in one of my stories, but my daughters loved to find the errors in their daddy's way. And they would document it. In time, I found other Capitol Hill writers who I respected who became supportive critics. Writers and editors from my past also stepped up to the plate. When I was writing my book, I sent a draft chapter to a former colleague who now teaches journalism at a California university. She offered numerous suggestions, but the comment that will always stick in my head is, if your intention was to aggravate and alienate the entire female population, then you hit the mark. If not, I suggest a revision. I'm a professional writer. Do I need this growth? Yes, I do. We all strive for greatness, as well we should. But done right, it's a never-ending, satisfying and gratifying journey to the land of greatness. If you are an artist, or you build brick patios on the sand base, or you bake pastries, you know what I'm talking about. The next one is always going to be better. There is no great, there is only the satisfying and gratifying journey to get there. I am not great, but I'm on my way. Thank you.
Okay, so how can we find out more about you? If our audience want to learn more and reach out to you, what's the best way?
Go to my website, yourconsistentvoice.com. You can fill out the form on the contact page to contact me, or you can just email me at tom@yourconsistentvoice.com. And I usually answer my emails within 48 hours.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for being here with us, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining in to Courage in Flight, or Courage TV. I hope you have a great day today and keep being courageous and reach for your dreams. See you next time.